Hello, my beautiful beings, and welcome to the podcast episode of today. So, in today's episode, we are talking about 5 things to do when you feel like you are spiraling. Now, this can be applied to any kind of emotional spiral. It could be when there's multiple things that are stacked up and you're just in general overwhelmed and you're finding it really difficult to deal with even the smaller tasks that normally wouldn't be so consuming. It could be if you're spiraling about some emotional thing that has happened to you, whether it be within your relationships, romantically, or with friends, any kind of spiraling, and what you can do in that moment to alleviate how you are feeling. And these 5 things that I'm going to offer you, whether you do just one, ideally all of them, you will notice some relief. And in some cases, you will notice total relief because, like many things, we kind of trick ourselves into thinking that the only way we're going to feel better is if this is resolved. But that is not true. You can feel so much better about something while something is still unresolved, and you can be working on it on the side. It could be something that you don't have the power to resolve, and you don't want to feel like you can't feel good until that thing is resolved. So you're going to notice that by doing these things, you're going to feel better. And ironically, the better you feel, the easier it is to resolve those things that are within your control, just because based on your mood, it's going to affect how you approach that thing, how you choose to deal with it, how you choose to resolve it, and all of the above. Okay. So this is going to be hopefully, a very practical episode. You can really use these tools straight away. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I would imagine most people that listen to this episode had these moments of spiraling, but I actually had one quite recently, and it was so funny because, well, not funny, but it was over just so many small things happening at the same time. So it wasn't like there was this one major event that was making me feel so frustrated, but I was so overwhelmed and I was so in what I was doing without getting perspective or stepping away that I was like on the verge of tears. And when I step back now and look at it, it's like, it's so amazing how we can psych ourselves into these crazy states where it feels like there's like, I can't escape it, I can't escape it. And then it just requires doing one or all of these 5 steps. And you realize, wow, there's so much I can be doing for my mood. And I can feel so much better in the span of just a couple of hours, or even by tomorrow morning, I'm feeling like a brand new person. Okay, so that's what we're talking about today. Love that so much for all of us. The brain fact, which we're going to get straight into right now, we are talking about, can consuming more nuts, as in nuts, that you can eat, not having more nut cases in your life, can consuming more nuts be beneficial for your depression, okay? Or with mood disorders, but in particular depression. So this basically comes from information around the link between vitamin B deficiencies and neurological problems and mood disorders, because a lot of nuts are quite high in vitamin B, among other things that are really, really good for your brain. Okay, I remember watching a documentary, don't even know what it was called, ages ago, and it was talking about how just simply a handful of cashews can actually do wonders for people's depression, more so than certain antidepressants, depending on the individual, obviously, because every single individual experiences antidepressants differently. But let's talk about it. So basically, vitamin B deficiency can have really, really strong effects on the brain, like major, and depending how deficient you are will depend on how severe these impacts are on the brain. And it also depends which vitamin B you are deficient in, okay? But generally, vitamin B deficiencies can manifest in mood changes. So we see depression, anxiety, irritability, and this is seen across like several different kinds of vitamin B deficiencies, because you've got B12, B1, blah, 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 blah. Because these vitamins are really important for producing and regulating neurotransmitters, such as things like serotonin, which is like a mood regulating neurotransmitter, dopamine, GABA, which is our major excitatory neurotransmitter. It's also vitamin B deficiencies are also related to fatigue and brain fog. So mental fatigue, where you really struggle to concentrate, where you feel sluggish, and also increased risk of cognitive disorders. So this is if you have long-term vitamin B deficiencies, in particular B12, and in particular folate, which I've spoken about in a brain fact before about the link between folate and neural tube defects in babies. That's actually linked to a higher risk of neurodegeneration and neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia, okay? So let's talk about an article that was published. So this article published in the Clinical Nutrition Journal, and the title of that article is called Nut Consumption is Associated with a Lower Risk of Depression in Adults, a prospective analysis with data from the UK Biobank cohort. It basically talks about how eating just 30 grams of nuts, and it's across a range of nuts as well, every single day is associated with a 17% lower risk of depression. Okay, and that's significant. 17% is a significant, and then especially if you tie that into other lifestyle factors as well that you can be doing, you can really be reducing your risk of developing depression in your life. So basically, there was all this data that was analyzed from the UK Biobank from around 500,000 citizens from the UK. And they examined more than, in this particular body of work, they were examining around 13,000 middle-aged and older people. The average age was around 58 years. And this study the data is analyzed between the years of 2007 and 2020, okay? So participants were given questionnaires to measure their nut intake, and across this study, they were also looking at depression symptoms or antidepressant use as well. Now, the results showed that middle-aged and older adults who ate 30 grams of nuts, and these included almonds, walnuts, cashews, hazelnuts, pistachios, and Brazil nuts, every single day had decreased likelihood of developing depression or of taking antidepressants, okay? And they discovered that this was the result across the board, even when you factor in for confounding variables and things like that. So when you factor in things like medical issues, lifestyle, other things that could impact for, causing mental health problems. So you already calculate for that, and you're still seeing 17% reduction or less likelihood of developing depression, okay? So let's go through some of these vitamins so you get a better idea of what exactly it is that happens. So number one, we've got vitamin B1, also known as thiamine. And deficiencies with B1 are cognitive impairment. So this is memory loss, confusion, difficulty concentrating, and something called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. So this is a neurological disorder often associated with alcohol abuse, where this thiamine deficiency will damage brain regions involved in memory and motor control. Okay, so difficulty walking, memory, hallucinations, things like that. You're also going to get fatigue and irritability if you are deficient in vitamin B1. Vitamin B6 deficiency, this is mood disorders, okay? Because B6 is very important for the synthesis of neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, among other ones. And so if you have a deficiency in vitamin B6, then this could cause depression and anxiety, as well as irritability. And then, of course, cognitive decline, in particular in older adults. Then we've got vitamin B9, which is folate. So, of course, like I mentioned before, this is neural tube defects in infants. So if you don't have enough folate during the development of the fetus, that can lead to the brain and spinal cord not developing properly, which could lead to neural tube defects, one of them being spina bifida, which I've already spoken about in the past. Depression, folate plays a really big role in mood regulation because it, again, supports the production of serotonin. And then cognitive decline and dementia. And then vitamin B12, memory loss. If you have a deficiency in B12, you've got memory loss. And the reason for this memory loss is because vitamin B12 or deficiencies in vitamin B12 actually affect the myelin sheath, which I've spoken about 1,000 times. And that is kind of the insulation, these fatty sheaths that wrap around the axon of your neuron, okay? And if you have damage to the myelin sheath, then you're not getting proper insulation of those fibers, and that disrupts or slows down transmission signals between cells, between neurons, and that could severely impact your memory, among other neurological processes. Then we've got dementia-like symptoms, confusion, disorientation, things that resemble dementia, and then depression and fatigue, because B12 is really important for brain energy production, okay? So if you have a deficiency in that, then yes, depressive symptoms, but you're also going to be fatigued. And when you're depressed and fatigued, that also can lead to a lot of irritability as well. So you need to basically be ensuring that you are consuming enough vitamin B. Nuts are a very great source. All the nuts that I mentioned before, walnuts, cashews, pistachios, things like that. If you are not sure if you have enough vitamin B in your diet, then there's no harm in supplementing with vitamin B, okay? And the different ranges of vitamin B as well. So I just mentioned just a few of them just now. But nuts also contain phytochemicals, which are associated with anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. So that's another reason why nuts are so good for your mental health. So just start eating a small handful of nuts every single day. You can mix the range of nuts, and it is going to do wonders for your brain, okay? Even if you're not depressed, eat some fucking nuts. Many good things going on there. Okay. That is the brain fact of today. Let's get straight into 5 steps if you are spiraling. We've all been there. We've all spiraled. How the fuck do you stop spiraling? Number 1 is stop suppressing it. Just stop it. Sometimes we will be so overwhelmed and we start spiraling and then we're trying not to have a meltdown, not to cry, What you need to do is just pause what you're doing and allow yourself to feel what needs to be felt. If you need to cry in that moment because you're so overwhelmed, you need to cry, okay? The energy that it takes to hide, to cover up, to hold back, to bottle something in when you are on the brink of an emotional meltdown is actually going to be more taxing than crying is for you. Now, please, if you're someone that holds back from crying, go listen to my episode from a couple of months ago or weeks ago about the importance of like a tactical cry and how crying is actually extremely therapeutic for many reasons. It's not just because you feel that release, but your body actually releases healing properties when you are crying. You actually release stress from your body when you cry, and then you start to feel this soothing effect that your body has on you. It is so healthy to allow yourself to experience the emotion that you are needing to experience. Mind you, this is very different from being like, wow, I feel good. Now I'm going to sit the fuck down and make myself cry. You know, there's a difference between choosing thoughts and making those thoughts like link onto a more painful thought, and then you're causing a spiral. But if you're already in a position where you're like, wow, I found myself in this place where I feel so overwhelmed, this is when you need to stop doing what you're doing and think, what emotion am I feeling right now? And if you need to cry, cry. If you feel frustrated, you can be like, oh, I'm so frustrated. You can let out a sound. You can, acknowledging the emotion and allowing yourself to feel it is very, very important, okay? Because bottling it up, no matter what the emotion is, actually slows down and impacts your ability to self-regulate and to feel back on track. It actually takes you longer to get back on track. I think a lot of people think that if we cry, then it's game over and I'm not going to be able to pull myself back together. It's actually the opposite, okay? Experience the emotion you're experiencing and you'll very quickly be able to self-regulate. We've all been there. Holding back tears is so, it's all consuming. And even though it's so like, oh, I didn't want to cry, but then after the cry, you feel so much better, okay? So whatever it is that you need to do, you need to feel it, okay? Now, don't tell yourself that you are weak if you cry, okay? If you feel your emotions, if you express your emotions, if you feel that you can't hold your emotions in, oh my God, I can't, handle my emotions, that I'm weak. That is your body screaming to release pent-up energy and saying, your body is instinctively saying, let me help you. If you just cry, I can release all these things, I can self-soothe, we can regulate. Okay, your body knows so much better than sometimes your learnt behaviors, okay? The instinctive body knows. So that's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of your body just saying, let me take control right now. Weak is saying to yourself, I'm not going to be able to handle it if I cry. That's bullshit. Of course you're going to be able to handle it. You handle things a lot better when you feel the emotion, okay? So number 1, of course, is stop suppressing. Whatever you need to feel it in that moment. I can guarantee you're going to speed up the process a whole lot faster. You're not going to continue to spiral. Number 2, the next thing you want to do is you want to create a circuit breaker for whatever it is that you are feeling in that moment after you have allowed yourself to experience it, okay? So this is like, I've cried it out, but I also know that once I have my cry, or once I've written down all the things that frustrate me, or once I've, made a vocalization of why I'm so annoyed, I don't then want to continue to then spiral and like bring myself back into. So I've experienced what I need to experience. Now I need to break the circuit. I need to step away from this task, and I want to physically change my location if possible. So this is where you remove yourself from the desk, remove yourself from your home, remove yourself from this environment, from the office, from whatever, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, a temporary thing. You need to break that circuit and step away from that space, okay? We underestimate the value of being in something and how much it can affect us versus being outside of that thing and watching it as if we're like a third party. Sometimes when you're so heavily involved in something, it feels like that thing is so much bigger than what it actually is, okay? The next thing that you're going to do, number 3, is I want you to write a list or a letter to yourself that says, for me to be calm, what would need to happen? Okay, I have started doing this for myself so much lately. I don't always write it down. Actually, I rarely write it down. It's only when it's like a big thing that I write it down. But sometimes I think for me to feel better, for me to feel calmer, what are certain things that would need to happen? And hint here, it's not that you have to resolve this thing because like I said, there's many things that are going to happen that cause you to spiral that are not in your control. So you can't say, well, once that's resolved, then I'll feel better, because you can't really control when that thing's going to be resolved if it's not directly in your control. But certain things such as if I had a bit more balance in my day, I know I would feel a lot calmer. If I was able to control other aspects of my day, then this would feel more manageable. Okay. So, for example, for me, the other day, last week, when I was absolutely like having one of those moments spiraling because everything was happening, like something that I was submitting was getting rejected. I had to do some tech stuff on something that I'm not tech savvy on. Then I had to reply to certain things, and there was a deadline on certain things, and something to do with my BAS and my tax. And then it was all happening. It was extremely overwhelming in that moment. And then I did the whole thing. Like I had my moment, I experienced it, I felt it. I then stepped away from that thing. And then I thought, what would need to happen in order for me to feel calmer about it? And it wasn't, well, I have to resolve everything, because I know that that's not the answer. But I thought, well, I know that when I'm organized, I already feel a lot better. So I thought, okay, well, what can I look at as far as organizing that's going to make me feel good? What could I do that's going to make tomorrow morning a bit easier? And so I started already looking at solutions based. And it's not necessarily around the exact thing that was causing me stress. I thought, what makes me calmer in general? Some people might be like, well, I know that the moment I step outside, I instantly feel calmer. And I just know that I'm working against what I know. I just need to get outside. For some people, it's like, well, it's when I meditate. It's when I listen to music and I change my mood by listening to music. It's when I call this one person that can always talk me down off the ledge. It's when, so you need to identify, what does feeling calmer look like? Look at it from like, I'm already here. What does that look like? And what are certain things that I can put into place to start to make myself feel calmer? Notice that I'm not saying this has to be resolved. I have to have finished this. I have to have an answer. We're just talking about your state, your physical state. All right? I want you to imagine yourself in the shoes of your calmer state, because when you are in that calmer state, your problem solving skills are so much better, okay? And it also helps you look at the bigger picture, because it's not like you say, am I crying because of this one email that came in? No, I'm crying because I'm burnt out and there's 1,000 things going on right now. And if I felt a little bit better and if I felt a little bit more control of other areas of my life, this one thing probably wouldn't have made me cry normally, okay? So this idea of what would it look like if I was calm, what would need to be done if I was calm, helps you look at a bigger picture perspective of your overall day, your overall life, okay? Now, number 4 is, what is one thing I can do that is going to make me feel like I have accomplished something by the time I go to bed? We feel happier, calmer, like we've achieved something better about ourselves when we have ticked something off. Now, this is symbolic. So I don't want you to think, oh, great, Alexis is doing a podcast on how to stop spiraling, and here I am trying to self-soothe and she's giving me something to put on my to-do list. This is simply symbolic. It could be the smallest thing, but we feel very fulfilled. We feel like we've accomplished something. We feel happier, calmer, like we've achieved something better about ourselves when we have ticked something off our, what we need to do. Okay. And again, it could be the smallest thing in the world and irrelevant from the thing that's making you spiral. Okay. So if work is the trigger that's making you feel really stressed, then don't make it about work. Okay. It could be, I'm going to reply to a handful of text messages that I haven't been getting back to. I'm going to book that doctor's appointment. I'm going to clean the filter off the dryer because it was beeping at me the other day and I keep putting it off and then I'm not drying clothes because I haven't cleaned the filter. Or I'm going to fold a quarter of the pile of my laundry. I know that when I wake up knowing I folded, it took me 10 minutes, I'm going to feel really good. I'm going to, whatever, okay? It is symbolic. It is not to add more onto your plate. It is to be like, see, I went to bed and even though I thought my day was a write-off because I was so upset, I achieved this one little thing. I'm feeling good. I did it. I could have not done it, but I did it and it was little and I feel good, okay? That to me, these tiny, tiny actions are crazy. So for example, what I did that day is, you know what's going to make me feel really good? I'm going to empty out my bag that I take to work, to the office. It's like a really oversized handbag. And I'm just going to tidy it up because it was a shit show in there. It took me about 7 minutes to do it. And I can't even tell you, I went to bed being like, oh my God, I can't wait to pack my handbag tomorrow morning to go to work. It's just going to be so basic. Our brains are very complicated on one end, but so fucking basic and easy to please on another end. So we're going to really lean into that aspect of our brain and use that to our advantage. It took me around 7 minutes to tidy out this fucking bag, and I can't tell you how good I felt having thrown out these receipts and tidied things up and put things away that didn't need to be in that bag. It was unbelievable. And this is the day that I was spiraling the other day. It was unreal. And then the fifth thing, and the most important thing, if I can say, is connect with someone. Now, this could be your dog, your cat, something that is also going to connect back with you, ideally. So where you can have a bonded connection. Or ideally, if possible, with a friend, a relative, someone that you love being in their company, all right? So if you live with your partner, you could say, hey, why don't you and I just go out for a walk? No phones, 30 minutes or however long. And you just walk, no music, no phones, nothing, and walk and talk. You'll be like, wow, oh my God, I feel so much more soothed. And then if you can take it that one step further with that connection, what can you do together or for that person where you feel that you are giving value, that you are of use, okay? So often, especially when we're spiraling, or in particular when we are experiencing extreme anxiety, the attention is on the problem and then needing to fix that problem and then needing to fix how we're feeling and then needing to fix. And we can get so overwhelmed that we get stuck in this cycle and then we're hyper aware of how we're feeling and then we're trying to mend it, but then we're too aware of how we're feeling and we're stuck in our heads, okay? It's extremely frustrating. And whether you have an actual anxiety, an anxiety disorder or an anxiety condition, or whether you're just going through an anxious bout, that's what's going on. That's what we're feeling, okay? Some people it's to an extreme, some people not as much. So it's all well and good to be doing the work on yourself, to be doing this, to be doing that. But when you're too internalized with your thoughts and what you're experiencing, it can sometimes make you go the other way, or it can sometimes make you feel a bit stuck and that you're not making any progress whatsoever. The one of the best ways to turn that around is to get out of your own head and to make it about something or someone else. Okay. So if you can connect with someone and then you can say, hey, do you want to discuss anything? Is there anything that's on your mind that you want to talk about? Is there whatever? And then you can start to offer advice, offer help, offer an ear for someone to listen to. And then you walk away being like, wow, I actually helped that person. I contributed. I was able to give them advice. I was able to give them a bit of my time. I was able to whatever. You will instantly start to feel better. You feel better because you weren't focusing on your own problems for that moment or weren't focusing on spiraling. But you also feel better because contributing and connecting with someone, other than, of course, course, the release of chemicals that make us feel bonded, like oxytocin and then serotonin and dopamine when you're contributing and you're doing something, but you feel like you actually are useful to that person. And when you feel useful to somebody else, you start to feel happier. It increases your self-esteem. It increases your confidence. And when your self-esteem and your confidence is increased, you start to look at your problems through a different lens. You start to look at your problems as, yeah, they still exist, but it's actually more manageable. This isn't actually overwhelming me. This is actually doable. And I might not be able to do it in one day or in 1 week, but I can actually chip it away at it. You start calming yourself down. And this happens by feeling bonded, connected, and like you are contributing or that you are of use to someone else, to your best friend, to your family, to people that you love. Of course, like I always say, when you contribute, when you do things for other people, it still has to be fulfilling. I'm not saying go out and be a martyr and do something that makes you suffer in order for someone to succeed. But I'm saying that while it's fulfilling for you, it's also very helpful for someone else. So in my example, I didn't even actually go and help someone. So the other day when I spiraled and I did all of that and I thought about what I would do to feel calmer and I emptied out my handbag and I cleared it up and it felt amazing, I then had my cooking night with my cousin Giselle. And I can tell you before that, I was spiraling so hard that I was like, I just need to get all this shit done. I might have to cancel on my cousin last minute. And then I thought, I was like, I know I know for a fact that will make me feel worse. I know it. So I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to leave the office an hour earlier. I mean, to be fair, I have the freedom to do that. So that's fortunate for me. But I left the office an hour earlier. And I was like, I'm going to do the grocery shopping for our cooking night. Then I started thinking about, I need this grocery. We don't have that. Do we have that? And then all of a sudden, I'm focusing on something else. Do we have this shit at home? I'm trying to go through the cupboards. I'm looking at everything. Then I go to Woolies and I'm buying all the shit. And then my cousin comes over and then we're talking. And then we're talking about her job. And then, by the end of the night, I hadn't thought once of the shit that I was thinking about all day long. I wrapped up the day, they left, and I felt so good. I'm like, oh my God. I've done all these tiny things. None of them were crazy instrumental things that made wild change, but all those things put together, I experienced my emotions, right? I removed myself from the situation. I thought about what I could do that was going to make me feel calmer. I did something tiny that made me feel like I'd accomplished something, and I had a great amount of connection with somebody that I love. And then by the end of the night, none of those problems had gone away. Not one. And I felt so fucking good. I felt it was under control. And then the next day, I rocked up to work with this attitude of like, every single one of those things in isolation is relatively easy. It's just a little bit annoying. I have to make a phone call that I might be on hold for. But I had this different air about me. I was like, it's easy. It's easy. It doesn't mean like it might be time consuming, it might be this. I'm just gonna chip away at it. I'm gonna chip away. And I felt on top of the world. So this is for me what I'm going to be doing every time I'm spiraling about something big or small, because you can apply this to when you're going through like a heartbreak, when you're going through, and your relief might be short-lived, as in you have that connection, you feel really good, and then you remind yourself of the heartbreak, or long-lived, like you can reframe how you approach your problems in that moment. But either way, you are going to get some respite from what you are experiencing, from that spiraling, from that suffering that you're going through. Okay. So do all 5 things. I'm going to summarize those 5 things. It is number 1, you want to stop suppressing it and actually allow yourself to feel that feeling. If you really want to get deep on that, go listen to my episode a few weeks or maybe months ago about tactical crying. There's so much science behind it. Just cry it out if you need to. And then number 2 is create that circuit breaker. Remove yourself from that location. Get out of that space. Even if you need to come back to the office, get out, walk around the block, come back, sit down. That does wonders. Just remove yourself from that environment. That breaks that circuit. You've snapped, and then you approach it with fresh eyes or a fresh mind. Number 3, write a list or a letter saying, for me to be calm, what would need to happen? And the key or the hint here is you want to broaden it. It doesn't have to be about the actual problem that you're facing. Think about other areas in your life that, when those things are going well, it actually helps contribute to other things. Like if my home is completely tidy, it actually helps me feel a lot calmer in other areas, even though they're not directly related. Things like that. Number 4 is, I want you to accomplish something tiny, and remember, it is symbolic. It can be the smallest thing, but that accomplishment already makes you feel a bit better about the other thing that you were spiraling on. And ideally, that accomplishment, make it completely irrelevant to that thing that you're stressing about. So that way you're not in that thing. We're talking about how do we make ourselves feel better about ourselves in our mind. And number 5, connect. Create a nice connection. Do something with someone. Help someone with their problems. Help someone problem solve, or just connect. Go for a walk, talk, but to make it even more beneficial, be useful to someone. Feel like you are useful. Feel like someone needed you and you were there for them. Doesn't even have to be in a really hard thing, just doing something fun together even. And you are going to feel absolutely on top of the world by the end of that. So those are my top 5 steps if you are spiraling. Guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Love you guys so much. As always, remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to your brain. Don't take shit from anyone, and especially don't take shit from yourself. Danke.